And does our attention say something about the values we have? The author is unknown. A Native American and his friend were in downtown New York City, walking near Times Square in Manhattan. It was during the noon lunch hour, and the streets were filled with people. Cars were honking their horns, taxi cabs were squealing around the corners, sirens were wailing, and the sounds of the city were almost deafening. Suddenly, the Native American said, "I hear a cricket." His friend said, "What? You must be crazy. You couldn't possibly hear a cricket in all of this noise." "No, I'm sure of it," the Native American said. "I heard a cricket." "That's crazy," said the friend, "and we're in the middle of concrete." The Native American listened carefully for a moment and then walked across the street to a big concrete planter where some shrubs were growing. He looked into the bushes beneath the branches, and sure enough, he located a small cricket. His friend was utterly amazed. "That's incredible. You must have superhuman ears." "No," said the Native American, "my ears are no different from yours. It all depends on what you're listening for." "But that can't be," said the friend. "I could never hear a cricket in this noise." "Yes, it's true. It depends on what is really important to you. Here, let me show you." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a few coins, and discreetly dropped them on the sidewalk. And then, with the noise of the crowded streets still blaring in their ears, they noticed every head within 20 feet turn and look to see if the money that tinkled on the pavement was theirs. "See what I mean?" says the Native American. "It all depends on what's important to you." May it be so for us also.
Well, thank you, Lynn. That's really good to reflect upon. Appreciate that. Well, I would like to take just a moment to welcome a new member. Major Scott Shelbourne from the Salvation Army is our newest member, and we are thrilled to be able to have you with us today. Let's all give him a round of applause. And Scott, would you unmute yourself and just introduce yourself to us all?
Absolutely. Pleasure to be with you. Our advisory board wanted me to get involved in this Rotary group especially. Uh, I've never been a part of Rotary before, although I've been to a lot of Rotary meetings as a Salvation Army officer presenting what the Salvation Army does. But I've always been in service clubs before, usually Kiwanis. But it's a great honor to be a part of this group. I like being in a group where I see such diverse faces, and it's a great thing. And I'm very happy to be a part of it. I'm new to Minnesota. I'm originally grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and I've served for the Salvation Army in Illinois, Iowa, and Nebraska. So it's an interesting change for me to be more in a more northern latitude. That's for sure. And but I am looking forward to being a part of the group.
Well, thank you, and we're very glad to have you. And you know, we've gotten behind projects with the Salvation Army in the past, and so we look forward to partnering with you in any way that helps as well. So feel free to bring those things to us. So glad to have you. Kathy, can we pop up our history picture? This is a picture that Lauren took at Taste of Rose Fest a number of years ago. And in celebrating this, Scott, if you don't know, this is our 50th year of this club. This is Seth Agessa, and if you didn't know Seth, you really missed one of the best. And I have to apologize because the picture brings tears to my eyes. Seth was 1 in a million, and we miss him. So I'm going to turn it over to Lauren, who's probably not crying right now, and I'm going to ask him to tell my 2 favorite stories about tickets and about Books for Africa.
Well, first of all, the story about tickets is Seth stood about, I don't know, 6'8" or something, 6'9", very tall guy. And he had an ape index that just seemed to go on forever. In case you're not familiar with the term ape index, it's the arm span that you have as compared to your height. And it's a term used by people who climb rocks a lot so they can see how far they can reach. Well, in Seth's case, he didn't climb rocks, but what he did is he came to the Taste of Rosefest and he used that long arm, and we would sell tickets by the arm length. And so he would allow people to get about 3 or 4 extra tickets because of his long arm. And so that's how he helped sell a bunch of tickets for the Taste of Rosefest. But an interesting character, and I traveled to Africa with Seth, and he was just a delightful person to go with, provided us with places to stay with the locals and learn how the locals lived and be part of the action there on a 24/7 basis. And what a delightful experience to have that chance to do that with Seth. And it's just one of those memories that I will always have. I think one of my goals in life is to build a good set of memories. And some of those memories with Seth are some of the better ones I have.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, I met Seth, first of all, at church. And he snaked one of those big long arms around me and pulled me into a hug. And he just determined who was going to be his friend. And, you know, you didn't really have any counter argument. You were just his good friend from that point on. And so Seth was one in a million. Rotary misses him. He passed away, I don't know, a few years ago. And I don't know. If anybody misses Seth, raise your hand. Yeah. Yep. We lost him too soon. Anyway, take a cheers to Seth Agasa, and he was a good man. All right, let's move on to announcements. I know we talked about one just a moment before we started the meeting, and that is that the Share the Love campaign has been extended. You have one more week to donate to the Rotary Foundation. And so if you haven't taken the chance yet, doesn't matter if it's $5 or $10, but there's some matching grants, and it's a good time to invest in the foundation. This money is really well used and well stewarded, and it does a lot of good. It multiplies there. So take a second, open a tab on your computer so that you remember after the meeting to make that donation. And then David Cray, I know that you have an announcement, and if anybody else does, would you please press your hand raise button and I'll look for you.
Okay, yeah, so the Rotary District has requested that we clubs all work on an environmental project, and there's going to be a celebration here in June, but the Green Team, led by Lynn Scott, and including Mary Jo McGuire and Ted Johnson and myself, will be proposing a partnership with another Rotary Club and a civic organization, which the district is asking us to do. And we're going to work on a project we previously worked on. We built 6 raised beds at the Y up in Shoreview previously. And we are going to expand on that. And we are going to do like a full cycle of life for the whole year, the whole growing season, I guess you could say. We are going to start out with having all our Rotarians start planting seed starters, and then we'll volunteer through the summer from May to September. And then we'll have some education along the way, hopefully from a master gardener or other people that know how to garden. And then at the end of the year, the produce will be shared through the Y and those in need in Roseville and Shoreview area. So a couple of things. Rotarians should start saving egg cartons for planting seeds from starter plants. And we're also currently looking for a volunteer master gardener. So if anybody in our Rotary Club likes to garden and there's a master gardener, we'd like to take a master class from that person and learn how to.
How many egg cartons do you want? How many egg cartons do you want?
We'll take as many as you can collect, and then we'll share amongst us. But we're going to basically use those egg cartons to start seeds. at our own
I
house.
got
so we can-
boxes full of them.
Boxes. Well, we have if anybody needs them, we know who can get them from. So thank you very much, George. We'll contact you on that. So otherwise, we are looking for a master gardener. So if anybody knows somebody or is willing to teach the rest of us how to do a vegetable garden, we would like to hear from you. And we're looking at basically inviting some other clubs. So the idea is to have other participating clubs and civic organizations. So we've asked Arden Hills Shoreview Rotary to join us, being that the Y is in Shoreview and in their area. And we've also are thinking about asking Friends of Roseville Parks and maybe some other groups to join us besides the Y, who also have a group of seniors that are going to help with the caring for the garden over the summer. And there's also going to be the young children at the Y that are going to help out. And hopefully they can learn how this whole cycle of life works and maybe make some salsa at the end of the summer. So we're pretty excited about it, the green team, and we would like to have everybody participate in some phase during this next growing season to help this environmental project be a success. Any questions? All
Well,
right.
I have backyard chickens and they would like to donate some fertilizer. We call that chicken gold, and if not me wants to haul it, that would be available.
We'll look for that later in the summer here.
Right.
All right, thanks.
Okay, any other announcements?
I've got one.
Okay, go ahead.
The Department of Labor and Industry gave the school, my school, a grant for $100,000 to train nursing assistants in high schools. So we'll be going into high schools, especially charter schools that work with predominantly kids of color, to train them to be nursing assistants.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful news. Boy, good job. All right, any other announcements? Okay, at this time, then I would like to ask our President-elect, Jenny Hedel, if you would kindly introduce our speaker.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of the Minnesota Hmong Chamber of Commerce, Yao, and I think you got married. You have a different last name, Ya. Comes to the Minnesota Hmong Chamber with extensive experience in the public sector as well as the nonprofit sector. She is currently an account manager with the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce and has served in the same organization in the capacities of public affairs associate as well as public affairs specialist. In addition to this, her civic leadership includes past appointments to the state of Minnesota's Minnesota Grown Advisory and the Governor's Committee on Pollinator Protection. Prior to working at the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce, she has been an organizer, manager, and food hub director with the Hmong American Farmers Association. So welcome.
Thank you so much for welcoming me. The reason why I have a name change is because I'm actually, Ya is how you pronounce my last name in Hmong. So I really wanted to pay homage to my heritage and my ancestors. So that's the reason why, as I assumed the role in Hmong Chamber, that's why I have embraced that identity more often now, instead of being known as Yang. So, yeah, thank you all for having me. And I apologize for last month. I had a really bad case of sciatica nerve on my back. I'm currently pregnant right now and I have a month to go. So I will be on leave, but hopefully everything will still be okay while I have people substituting for me and taking care of my organization while I'm gone. A little bit about me. I am a Benny. I graduated from College of St. Benedict's University with a major in environmental studies and a focus in food systems. And so as you can see, I have a little bit of background in agriculture. I'm not a garden expert, so wish you all the best to your bountiful garden this year. I'm gonna try doing it this year too. I just recently moved to Oakdale, so we'll see how the grounds are here. If I can claim host, oh, okay, I am already host. I will start on my presentation. Okay. And I'll have to do screen share. That's right. So screen share. Sorry. I didn't know it's taking so long. What? I'm having some difficulties here.
Yao, if you want, I have it ready to go. Do you want me to pull it up? This is Kathy
Sure,
Hewitt.
thank you, Kathy. I'm currently frozen right now, so I don't know what to do.
That's fine. I'm going to stop your participation on your screen share, and then I'm going to bring it up on my screen.
Okay, perfect.
There you go. All right, and you can just tell me next slide when you're ready.
All right, thank you so much. All right, we're going to go over the agenda. So the next slide here. I was under the impression that I would be giving a presentation about our Hmong community and of course our Hmong Chamber and how it's all intertwined. So I'll give a brief history of Hmong history, arts, customs and culture, Hmong Americans, Hmong Minnesotans, Hmong Chamber, and then we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. Slide. So I'm sure most of you are well aware of our Hmong history, maybe or maybe not so much, but we are an ethnic minority and predominantly in China, Vietnam, and Laos. And now, since the Vietnam War, we have been all over the world. But before the war, we were a small minority group that created in China, and there's a lot of Hmong people in southern Asia or just around southern China. There's a lot of different varieties of our ethnic groups. Think of us as almost like gypsies, like Asian gypsies. So that's pretty much who we are. But the Hmong that you know, like me and my people right now, that are in the United States, we currently have 18 last names, and they're just more like surnames that you're more familiar with, anywhere from Yang, Vang to Her, Moa, Lor, and then there's definitely more uncommon names as well, such as Ku, Fang, Kong. Those are uncommon last names that not that many families are under. Next slide. So how do we get here? Of course, the Secret War, during the Vietnam War, many of the CIA recruited Hmong people to the guerrilla army, and they helped rescue US pilots, set up bombs, and also stop the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So some of the trails that the Vietnamese were using for their any kind of like cargo passenger, right? So the Hmong were helping a lot of the CIAs and the soldiers during that time. And General Pao is our prominent leader at the time that was first recruited and then successfully recruited many Hmong soldiers. Nonetheless, to say there were actually Hmong people that actually also fought the other side too, that were also recruited by the Communist Party. But then as we all know, more Hmong people were actually recruited by the United States, CIA. The estimated count was over 20,000 Hmong soldiers died, along with 10,000 casualties during the Vietnam War, from 1961 all the way to even after a good 1976 or so, because many people, they escaped after the war was over. They had to cross to the Mekong. They had to cross Mekong River to seek refuge in Thailand. That's where it was a neutral state and the only really safe haven for any Hmong families that were involved in this war. Many of the sons and husbands, grandfathers served the war and thus jeopardized many of their families as targets in the jungle of Laos and Vietnam. And since then, from Thailand, many Hmong families, and not just Hmong families too, there are other minorities that were also running away from the communists at that time that seek refuge in Thailand, that were immigrated out of Thailand. And now we have Hmong families and other immigrant families in the United States, Canada, Australia, France, French Guiana, and all over too. But those are some of the prominent countries that many of the refugees seek haven for. Next slide. So some of the Hmong arts, customs, and culture. We have the two most common dialects in our language right now is white and Cree. And so it's kind of like saying British English and American English, right? We have different dialects, we have different words for different things, right? It's just very similar to that. That's the best way for me to interpret what those dialects are and how it sounds like. And then two common religions in our culture right now are animism mixed with shamanism, and then also Christianity. And missionaries came to Southeast Asia around 1950s, and so there's a huge influence from them, and a huge percentage of Hmong people are actually Christians, and it also helped influence the Romanized popular alphabet. So a lot of Hmong verbiage, or a language alphabet is heavily influenced by these missionaries, because they wanted to translate the Bible. And at that time, Hmong people didn't have a written language after so many years of just migrating down south. A lot of that written language that was influenced by like Mandarin Chinese has been lost. So those are some of the influences that we got from the West. And next slide. Many of you may know that Hmong arts is really well known for their Bambao story cloth. As an example here in the PowerPoint, it's a representation of how their story began, and just the passage of their life, or depending on a certain folklore or folk story that the person wants to tell. And a lot of this is based on farming as well. Hmong people are subsistence farmers, and they will really well known for rice, corn, squash, mustard greens, starchy roots, cucumbers, and also livestock. Next slide. Thus, this has a huge influence in our way of life, and our fashion is also a huge representation of our hometown and region, because there's so many Hmong groups in Southeast Asia and tribes, they all have their own kind of characteristics of clothing and even language too. So with their fashion, it was a representation of where their hometown or region was. And because of their culture and agriculture, Hmong New Year is a season of harvest, of celebration, of courting. And it's kind of a misconception in the United States now, because back then it was more like, okay, this is the time of the year where we actually do an in-house celebration to welcome and bless the house and the family. And then you eat a lot of food. You eat a lot of food. And then there's also the celebration where you go to a huge party. Well, and many of you may hear about this, like we're well known in Minnesota for the Hmong New Year River Center celebration. And that's about a 2-day weekend celebration where there's people come in their best garments, and they celebrate fall tossing, and it's essentially a courting season because this evolves around our harvest so much. That's the only time, traditionally back then, the only time that you can actually find a mate. That's the only time you can actually court, because you work so hard to farm and support your family. The only time you actually get to find another person to start a life with is when you do the celebration here. And so there's a lot of history, a lot of tradition and customs that comes with our Hmong New Year that we take a lot of pride in. Next slide. So I talked a little bit about the courting. Courting in Hmong is, I guess, very like your typical, whoever has seen like Bridgerton, the popular show Bridgerton on Netflix, you can have many suitors. They're like, the dating is not like how it's modern today, but the definitely courting was really different back then in our Hmong culture, where men will come many villages away just to come court different other women at night, but then they would they would sing songs and play songs for them. And so that's like the typical courting life for people back then in Laos and Thailand. And this still kind of happens today too. Of course, with our Western influences now, we don't do that. And as for wedding, this is actually my wedding photo of my husband and I. I'm wearing the traditional Hmong garments that my mom hand off to me. So a typical Hmong wedding, it has a whole process from welcoming to doing this hoopli, that actually calling the spirits to welcome the new family member, and then it's a 3-day feast. It literally is a 3-day feast of nonstop eating and drinking. It's a lot of fun. And then this is a bride price is a very common thing in my culture. In the United States right now, we have a cap at $5,000 for bride price, and this is a bride price that the groom's family is expected to give to the bride's family, and then the bride's family always has a dowry for the bride when they hand her off to the man that she's going to be with for the rest of her life. And the funerals, we traditionally have them for a week long, but because of modern technology and influences today, we have it now in a 2 or 4-day weekend, depending on the religion. And I always get this, I'm always quite because I grew up around this so much, I always am shocked at hearing how mainstream funerals are done, because most mainstream funerals are done within a day. And I'm just like, what? How do you get everything done in a day? But for us, for Hmong families, we prep literally for a whole month, and we spend a lot of money on funerals. On average, most families spend close to $70,000 for a funeral. That's from renting the funeral home to the casket to providing all the food for the guests and everything. So it costs a lot. But we typically do this because we want as many family members to come and visit and mourn before we send off the person into the afterlife. And next slide. So Hmong Americans, I wanted to talk a little bit about now that Hmong Americans are in America since 1975, some of the first settlements of Hmong, California, Colorado, Idaho, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, of course, like just everywhere in the nation. It started with just the people that were directly involved with the war, because they were the highest risk at getting targeted by the communists. So many of them had to make the decision, like, do they stay and risk their lives, or do they leave to a new country that they don't know of at all? It was definitely a hard time. I know I heard stories of my uncles and some of my extended family members where they had to secretly leave overnight and not even tell their other family members, because there was just so much tension in the family that's saying that, oh no, if you go, then we're just going to be estranged and we're not going to see each other. We have to stick together. So a lot of family have to make this hard decision and leave to a new continent, a new place, and settle there. As of today, we have over 260,000 Hmong Americans in the United States of America, and that's just from 2010 census. I don't even know what the 2020 census count is. It hasn't been out yet, so we don't really know actually. Hmong Americans are very community based and also very family oriented. And something that you may have heard that like about how Hmong people are quite close or related, it's because when the war broke out, not a lot of people were left. Not a lot of Hmong people were left. And so they all were, they all seek refuge in Thailand. So a lot of them know each other. And a lot of them, when they moved to the United States of America, that's how so many of them are just so close. Or like I have so many relatives because when you start small and you just all kind of like, oh, this one is these two meet, and then those other two people meet, and so it's just like we're all like this big family because there was just so little of them, a few of them, and they all started becoming this bigger family. And now there's just so many Hmong people in our community but we're all kind of like families too. Somewhere, somehow we're related to some who through marriages. Next slide. So Hmong Americans, some notable literature and art that you might be familiar with or not, or you don't know about yet. The Spirit Catches You and When You Fall Down. This is a very, very popular literature for medical students because it has a huge, controversial debate about what do you do in light of medical practices and also like the cultural practices that they still carry. And so how as a medical practitioner, how do you navigate through some of those cultural barriers? And then The Late Homecomer by Kalkalia Yang. She is a Minnesotan author, and she also has written many other books too, but her most notable literature is The Late Homecomer, about her family coming to the United States and settling in Minnesota, and how she grew up in St. Paul. So it's a great literature. If you haven't read it, read it. And then one of the most notable movies out there, Gran Torino, directed by Clint Eastwood. This movie involves Clint's character who gets really close with the Hmong family next door, that has like this whole challenge and barrier with other community gangs and stuff like that. So great movie. If you haven't watched it yet, take a peek on it. I believe it's streaming right now and many other services. Other notable Hmong Americans, Mi Mo, one of the first female state senators of Minnesota, and then Fong Her, who's currently a Minnesota state senator as well. Brenda Song, she is Hmong, a Hollywood actor. Sonisa Lee, 2019 World Champion Gymnast. And we're really happy that she is also from Minnesota too. So many of these people are from Minnesota. So we're really, really happy to have these notable Hmong Americans in our area. And then Jerry Yang, 2007 World Series poker. Next slide. And then other communities and social issues that we have, of course, like when Hmong first immigrated to United States, there were a lot of gangs, a lot of violence that happened in our community. And of course, domestic violence is just not a society issue in our community, but it is in general. And then poverty, about 37% of Hmong Americans still live in poverty. And then of course, health disparities. Many Hmong are known to be diabetic or have some sort of obesity issue. And many of the issues relate to their way of life changing, because many of them were farmers, were very active when they were in Southeast Asia, but then coming to the United States, that way of life has changed a lot. They're just not as active as they used to be. So, and with the food changes as well, their meat is more accessible here. When Hmong used to live in Southeast Asia, they didn't have access to meat. They were literally vegans for most of the time and only ate meat when they can, because they didn't have refrigeration. They can only eat meat, freshly killed or jerk. So some of those health challenges definitely increase more as United States has created more accessibilities for us to have access to meat and refrigerated food, processed food and sorts. And then of course, mental health and racism are continuous societal issues in our community. Next slide. So Hmong Minnesotans, we have the largest concentration per capita Hmong community here. We're very proud of that. So according to 2010 census, about 66,000 Hmong individuals live in Minnesota and heavily in the metropolitan area, right? From Minneapolis, Bloomington, Brooklyn Center to Woodbury over here. They're trailblazers in nonprofits, government, business, and education service. Great community organizers. Notable people that are currently in office: St. Paul City Council member Dai Tao and Nelson Yang, State House Representatives Colleen Her, Fu Li, Jay Xiong, Du Hyung, and Samantha Vang. Those are just prominent people that you might know about. And then Hmong Minnesotans themselves, we have a buying power of 615 million estimated And I think that number needs to be updated too. And many of you know, at the farmers market, majority of them are Hmong farmers as well. So Hmong, they love their farming, and they really do have a huge presence here in the metropolitan farmers market. And the quality and the prices are great for what they are marketing at. And then also notable flea markets that are in the St. Paul area, Hmong Town Marketplace and Hmong Village. So these two places, if you have been there, they're just amazing cultural experiences to get to know. Like, you literally step in there and you feel like you're in a different world, in a different continent. And it's quite amazing. There's a lot of art, a lot of herbal and medicine, and also just a lot of interesting pieces and of the culture that you can actually learn about when you go, and a lot of food too. So if you want to go enjoy Hmong food or experience some kind of that influence, go there and check it out. They have amazing things. Another tip is bring cash. Many of them only accept cash. So that's just a pro tip. And then Hmong Minnesotans are also known for the Hmong charter schools. We have a lot of great Hmong charter schools here in the state. And I think, frankly, just Minnesota is known for charter schools. I believe we're the first state to actually have charter schools in the nation. And we have a lot of great charter schools. And so we continue to have that kind of legacy in our community as well. Notable Hmong nonprofits, Hmong American Partnerships, Hmong 18 Council, Hmong the Lao Family Community in Minnesota, Hmong Culture Center, and of course the Minnesota Hmong Chamber of Commerce as well. So talking more about our chamber, we were actually established in 1998 by 25 members. And I have to be honest, it has been challenging. The organization has gone through a lot of leadership turnovers and just directional challenges in what they want to do. When I was approached by the board members, I didn't think I can do it. I had a lot of self-doubt because I was very young. I still am very young, but when they were like, "Oh, you should consider being the ED, and you can definitely do this work," and with the words of encouragement from my employer, from the St. Paul Area Chamber, I definitely went along with it, and here I am representing the Minnesota Hmong Chamber of Commerce. So when I took the role in 2019 December, I decided that I wanted to focus on rebranding the chamber, because there just has been a lot of relationship challenges and trust issues and branding issues in our organization. Not many businesses or our members in my community knew who we were or what we were offering, what kind of services the chamber can offer. So I literally deconstructed the organization, paused membership, worked on our mission and vision, and worked on our priorities as well, because the board and I, we wanted to make sure that we weren't false advertising something that we didn't have. So we wanted to make sure that we can really deliver top-notch member services to our members. We wanted to really focus on capacity development, business development, workforce solutions, DEI advocacy, and really help sustain our business in the area here. Of course, the pandemic happened. Today is March 1st. Can you believe it or not? Like, this, it's been a year. It's been a year since Minnesota has had its first official case. And unfortunately for us, for Minnesota Hmong Chamber of Commerce, we had we had a struggle. We had a struggle because after many years of just organizational challenges, and then I took on this new leadership role, and people still didn't know who I was. We had a huge challenge in getting our membership up and recruiting and also just getting my business community together, because there's just there was just a lot of mistrust in the community, in the government, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain because of the economic shutdown. And then of course there was racism, misinformation, and people who just wasn't sure what resources were out there to help their business. So Minnesota Hmong Chamber of Commerce, we decided that we're going to make our membership really low rate, and we're going to just do the work, for our businesses, making those relationship partnerships with SBA, with stakeholders, and with our legislators, and making sure that our businesses are not left behind, our community is not left behind. We made a list of businesses that were open so that people can still continue supporting them. So many people at that time didn't know who was open for takeout, for delivery, what businesses were impacted with the George Floyd uprising. That was really challenging for our businesses because they didn't know what to do. They felt that they were left out of this narrative. They didn't want to speak out because they were afraid of the backlash that they might receive. And there's just, and I'll be honest, there's just been a lot of focus on Black and brown, but not a lot on Asians. And a lot of my business members, community members, felt that this Asian narrative is left out of Black Lives Matter or like this Black and brown narrative. And we wanted to be part of it, but we weren't as well. So there was definitely a lot of challenges this past year with this whole racial justice movement, social justice movement. And as a leader in Hmong Chamber, we wanted to bring up more, but not create some backlash as well. Next slide. So in light of all of that, we continue to have virtual events. We have monthly member meetings, monthly connections, and they're just like networking, speed networking events for members and non-members. We're not only exclusive to Hmong businesses. We have member businesses from any background. We accept anybody. As long as you have an interest in doing business with us, that's all that really matters, right? So some of our examples like Heritage Home Healthcare to Mark Hugh, Petitis Paris, Drake Bank, St. Paul Port Authority. Those are just a few examples of our current members right now. And we have roughly about 70 members in our chamber, and that's still continuing to grow on the rise here as well. Next slide. And that's it, really. If you have questions for me, I'm more than happy to answer them or contact me. You can contact me. My phone number is right there. Unfortunately, I'm not at the office right now, but I do have ways to connect to my phone, or you can email me and we can set up a time to talk more if you're interested. Like our Facebook, visit our website if you have questions or just want to learn more about us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yao. We'll take some questions now, and I see that Mary Jo has raised her hand. So if others of you have questions, please push your little hand raising icon.
Thank you so much, Deb, and thank you so much, Yao. I'm Mary Jo McGuire, and I'm a county commissioner, and I love what you're doing. And I appreciate that you're here telling us about this. I've been lucky enough to go to your Hmong New Year. It's an amazing event. If any of you are able to get there, it is phenomenal. The farmers markets, I've learned so much about vegetables and what to do with them from all the wonderful Hmong farmers. And just appreciate all of your work. And I'm lucky to have some of your work that the storyboards in my office. It's just so beautiful. I have a couple of questions in my head, but maybe just the one I'll ask is, you came here, the Hmong are such a resourceful people and have contributed so much to our economy. When you came here, were you mainly farmers, or were you I'm sure you were all sorts of things, but what would you say is the most, are there any professions that you're mostly in, or that you tend to, that the Hmong people tend to do more than others? Or I'm just curious. I know you're everywhere. I know you're doing amazing work in all aspects of society. But if you would just comment on how you maybe came here as farmers, I think, but I'm not sure. And then you just built yourselves up, then you did a whole lot of other things when you got here. Could you just talk a little bit about what your orientation was, or what you were thinking, or what was going on when you first came?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. For sure. At first, the first wave of Hmong settlers from the refuge were mostly Hmong farmers. And even they were intentional about it as well. Like, for instance, French Guiana, they were having a huge agricultural crisis in the country. And they were really intentional about having Hmong people settled in the area. And even in different states too, like in Idaho, I didn't know Hmong people settle in Missoula, Idaho, like of all places. They settled in Missoula, Idaho, because they were intentional actually about having, farmers there. And in fact, in Missoula, this is really interesting. All of the Hmong farmers there are organic farmers versus other farmers throughout the states here. They're not organic. They're like, they don't practice organic. Like, a lot of them don't. And I used to work with Minnesota Hmong. I used to work with Hmong American Farmer Association, and we struggle having our farmers practice organic. And we're making we were making a lot of those transitions. And so a lot of Hmong, the first wave, Hmong farmers. But then because of that, they generated enough wealth for their families to do other things as well. And so now we have a lot of Hmong people doing nonprofits, right? We have a lot of Hmong people in assembly factory as well, to government officials, and also to education. We have teachers, we have principals, we have so many Hmong individuals in those different specific workforces. And now, like, some of the hot booming industries are like real estate, tech, even medical as well, and especially in the larger cities like St. Paul, Minnesota, and Minneapolis to Fresno, Sacramento, and places like that.
Well, I just thank you. Yeah, I thank you so much. We're just a stronger community because of all of you. So thank you so much. I'm sorry, Deb. Yeah.
No, thank you. We have a number of other questions. We'll do David first, then Khadija, and then Hyun. So David.
In the movie Gran Torino, the fictional movie Gran Torino, I understand it was loosely based in Minneapolis, or the author was from here or something, and or in St. Paul, sorry. But when the movie came out, they decided to base it in Detroit. Any idea why they moved it? It's all fictional anyway.
Yeah, I think I read a little bit about it. It was just cheaper. Minnesota had, I know it's just our state laws for motion pictures is just more expensive. So they decided to go to a different state that had less, like tax credits are different. So that's really the reason why.
Got it.
Great question. Thank you. Khadija, you want to go next?
Yes, I'm driving to work. So thank you so much. I am a member of the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce. And I know that we hold the Hmong Chamber as an example of a successful minority chamber. So we're trying to model our chamber with yours. You talked about Black Lives Matter and that issue there. So I'm wondering, I have two questions. One, how can we work together? Because I know there's an animosity between the Asian community and the Black community that needs to be addressed. We need to sit down and talk. So how can we come about and maybe connect with the Black Chamber and we can find a way to get our communities together to talk and work together? And then the other thing, like I said earlier, I've gotten some funds from the Department of Labor and Industry, and I'm interested in charter schools. So the charter school, I have money that I can train them as nursing assistants, and that can be a good place to start this relationship that can help both our communities, not just that get to know each other, get along, understand each other, and start to work together. How would you suggest we move about that? What do you think of the idea? What do you think we need to do moving forward?
Thanks, Khadija. For sure, it's a work in progress. So Minnesota Hmong Chamber is actually office next to Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce.
Nice.
And I know that Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce is actually looking for a staff right now. So they're looking for a new ED. And hopefully when the new ED comes in, we can definitely start from there, right? And I have always been a huge champion of Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce. So I know some of the board members as well. And I just met the new board chair last week, but not formally yet. Yep.
Abel is pretty cool.
Yeah, so definitely, I completely agree. There just needs to be more partnership. I think with just this past year, it's just been really challenging to put that on a calendar, right? But definitely, I would love to continue partnering and talking about how we can create those narratives and really help build each other's allyship.
Yes, thank you so much for coming.
All right, I think we are going to finish up with Jan's question, and then we'll bring our meeting to a close after that.
Okay, welcome. I just love Hmong family, Hmong culture. And I came here in 1970. So I was very lonely being an Asian here with just a few of us. And then when you came, it's just a celebration. And there are a lot of similarities of especially shamanism from Korea and Hmong. I always say you are my sisters and brothers. So my question is that if I want to join your chamber, I could do that, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So I wanted to start with that. So I took your phone number, and I think you have to have a baby first. But I I run civil engineering company, and I'm really focusing on a lot of immigrants to work with. And we really have to work with Black Lives Matter and all those people. They have to stop saying just brown and Black people, and they stop there. Asians are really facing a lot of racism in this country too. So how we positively work together to, understand the history of this country, the very dark history of this country, and as well as the how to work together. And I can really see your chamber is somewhat similar struggle what Korean chamber had, still struggling. But I really like to work with your community. And do you know Eileen Ho? She just became the board of regents for University of Minnesota. Yeah, so she's my good friend too. So welcome. And I will give you a call to connect to join you as join as a member, and then maybe you should join our Rotary Club too.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely consider it. Thank you so much.
And I was thinking if you join Yao, we could maybe adopt a new policy of 3 days of feasting and drinking in your honor. And, you know, moving forward, many of us might like that. So anyway, absolutely wonderful conversation with you today, Yao. You come from a beautiful background and gave us many lovely things to think about. And let's all give her a little round of applause here. So thank you so much.
I love Hmong food. They're just delicious.
Yeah. And if we look at your website, we can support your businesses, right? They're listed on there. Okay, that'd be great. Jen,
so
would you please tell us who we can hear from, look forward to hearing from next week?
Yep. Next week we have Ling Becker and Amanda LaGrange, and they're with the Workforce Solutions Director, Ramsey County Economic. So thank you for Jan for organizing them for next week.
Looking forward to that as well. And we're also given honorary Paul Harris Fellowship out, and I'm excited about that next week. So I thank you all for joining us. It was great to see such a big crowd here today, and we will see you next week.